Hi, second grade. I'm Mrs. Hearn, and I teach orchestra of 3rd through 12th grade. And I'm really sorry that we didn't get to see each other in person for the second grade end of the year orchestra presentation. So this is usually where I present all of the instruments, and a few people get to actually try out the instrument that they might be interested in playing next year. So if you're in my Bitmoji classroom, you can click on each of the instruments. We have the violin, the viola, the cello, and the bass, and I've linked it to a song that is made popular by that instrument specifically. So the 4 instruments that we have are violin, viola, cello, and bass. And here's a violin. The violin and the viola are very similar, and you can see that even the sizes are similar. The viola, after you get full grown, I guess, can get bigger and bigger, where a violin, it stops at a full size. So even though these instruments are the same size now, the possibility for the viola is to go a whole lot bigger. So the violin has the highest string, and then the next 3 strings, A, D, and G, are the same on the viola, but the viola's highest note is that A, D, and G, and then the viola also has a C string. So the viola is a little bit thicker, it's a little bit more resonant, it's kind of closer to what a cello sounds like, but you also hold that one with your chin and your shoulder. So the cello, like I said, has the same strings as the viola, but in the cello is much bigger, and we sit when we play the cello. So I'm going to just show you what the cello looks like. And all of these instruments come in different sizes. So you can be really tall and play the smallest instrument. You can be shorter and you can play the bigger instruments. So the cello comes in lots of different sizes. The smallest cello that I've ever seen actually kind of looks like a really huge viola. So we have an end pin on the cello, and we actually sit, and the cello goes between your legs, and you can see that in the video where the young gentleman is playing the Swan, which is probably one of everyone's favorite cello pieces. And so then after the cello, which is an octave lower than the viola, we have the biggest instrument, which is the bass. And our bass players start by sitting on a stool, and the cello rests between your legs. You can also stand when you play the bass, and this is the bass. So again, the bass comes in lots of different sizes. So there are 3rd graders who have started on bass. Usually it's a little easier to play if you have a little bit thicker fingers or larger hands, because the strings are very big and they're thick. These instruments haven't been tuned because we haven't been in the classroom. So this is the bass, and so now we've gone over all of our instruments. So the way that we make the sound on the instrument is we can either pluck or we can bow. So at the beginning of the year, we start by plucking, and then right after Christmas, we start to use our bow. So we have this sound, and then we can also, those are the 2 different ways that we can make sound on our instrument. So we talked about the instruments that we offer, and now we need to talk about the balance of the orchestra. So I always say it's kind of like a football team. Everyone knows about the violin. Sometimes a lot of people want to choose the violin, but it'd be kind of like having all quarterbacks on a football team. So even though you recognize that person would have no one to throw to, no one to hand the ball off to, because they would all be playing the same thing. And so the orchestra, we need people to play violin, viola, cello, and bass, so it's balanced. Just like another example is like a wedding cake. Everyone looks at that top piece of the wedding cake that's really small, and that's what I think of the violins as being at the top, and it's kind of a flourish and the decorations and the stuff at the top. But it's the bottom of the cake that keeps that foundation, and it allows that piece on the top to stay there. So if you had the piece on the top, on the bottom, the little tiny piece, the whole thing would fall apart. So what we really need is some basses we need some cellos, we need some violas, and we need some violins. So in third grade, everyone learns the same music, we play the same songs, and then as you get older, we start to play ensembles where everyone has a different part. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. Some people don't want to stand when they play, some people want to sit, some people don't want to carry the bigger instrument, some people like that really low sound. And some people want to play the smaller instrument, but they want the higher sound. So that was the violin. The one I played right before was the viola. So that is talking about the balance of our group. So the requirements for orchestra, you have to, usually people rent an instrument. We prefer that people rent an instrument instead of using an instrument that they might have from a brother or sister or another relative, because those tend to be a little bit too big. They're usually not the right size for beginners. So we usually rent our instruments, and there's a one-time purchase at the beginning of the year where you purchase the book and a shoulder rest, which is one of these. I know you can't see that very well. A shoulder rest, we have rosin and a cloth, and then most people get a music stand. And Lyle Violin Shop has all of those things that come together in a package. That's Lyle. And usually we have a brochure that goes home, but all of their stuff is online, and I can send a link to that later on. So that's a one-time purchase, and then you're set for third grade. And that's the only time that you should have to purchase anything until you either need the next book, the book 2 or the book 3, or if you go up a size in instrument for violin and viola, you do have to get a larger shoulder rest as you get bigger. So now let's talk about the time commitment. So we learn our instruments in the classroom, but then you also get to go home and practice your instruments. So the first few months of school, the instruments actually stay at school. And then students earn their golden ticket and they get to take their instruments home. And then the instruments go back and forth. So in the beginning of the year, there's no practice time at home because your instruments aren't there. And then as we approach our Christmas concert, we usually have 5 to 10 minutes of practice time a day. But once we're done with Christmas, then we have 80 minutes of practice a week. So that's 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So there are some people who are involved in a lot of sports. You might play another instrument already, and you may not have time to play a second instrument or to be able to commit that much time. So it's definitely something to think about. So there is that time commitment, and there is the rental financial commitment to play. We do ask that once you sign up for orchestra, or if you are going to be in Mrs. Nelson's music class, that you stay in that class for the entire year. We don't want people choosing one and then switching over to the other, because it makes it difficult for us to put our sections together for any programs that we're going to be doing. So we want to keep our parts balanced and know what we're going into our concert season with. So those are our instruments, and this is the time, if we were together, that I would call people up and you would get to try to pluck some of the instruments and usually play Hot Cross Buns, which is our first song that we do. By the time we get to October, we're usually learning that piece, but unfortunately we won't get to. And I usually play some examples, but I figured it would be best to have you link to YouTube and have some people who can play and ensembles that you can hear play those pieces that are really famous. So if you have any questions, you can always email me, and I will also be sending the form home that you can sign up. What we usually do if you sign up for orchestra is then I see you the very end of the year and you get sized, but since I can't see you, we're just gonna have to give an educated guess on the size instrument that you would choose based on perhaps people who have just started who had started in third grade this year, and kind of compare and give you a general size that would fit you. So the other thing that you do is you can choose two instruments. You have a first choice and a second choice. And sometimes people get their second choice because if everybody signs up for viola, we still need some other instruments. If everyone signed up for bass, we would just have a bass choir instead of an orchestra. So do think about what your second choice would be in addition to your first choice. So if you have any questions, you can always email me. My email is khearn, Hearn, @northlandchristian.org. And I look forward to meeting some of you in the fall.